Welcome all to today's OD6 Metals Limited Investor Briefing webinar. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. My name is Lucas Robinson from Investor Relations Consultancy, Corporate Storytime. OD6 Metals is an Australian company pursuing exploration and development opportunities within the critical minerals and precious metals sectors. The company is focused on advancing the Quinn Fluorspar Project in Nevada, USA, and its 100% owned Splinter Rock Rare Earths Project in Western Australia. Joining me today is OD6's Managing Director, Brett Hazelden, and OD6 founder and technical advisor, Dr. Darren Holden. During today's live investor briefing webinar, Brett and Darren will walk us through a technical review of the company's fluorspar and gold exploration activities at the Quinn project. Brett and Darren will be pleased to take any questions during the Q&A session following the presentation. If you are joining us live today, the webinar is being recorded and you are welcome to submit your questions at any time during the webinar via the Q&A function on your screen. If we are unable to address your question, we'll be sure to follow up with the response after the webinar. So without any further ado, I'm delighted to hand over to Brett to start a presentation.
Thanks for having us. Darren's just going to bring up the presentation for us and we'll get into it. A couple of little good surprising events there for us going forward. There's obviously been the discovery of some gold just on top of the area. And we'll obviously walk through it today. So today's discussion's not necessarily an investor pitch type thing. It's really almost a geek out session, if you want to put it that way, where Darren can talk about geological and the technical merits of what we're doing and what we're finding out there. So if we just move through the first couple of slides, there's the normal important information and then into our corporate snapshot slide. So share price has been a bit frustrating from my point of view. We hit those 20-cent marks and then we probably should have kept on going, was my expectations, but the market has pulled back. A mixture there of the June sell-off that you see with tax. And then it started kicking back in again in July, as normally happens, and then good old Donald Trump started bombing again in Iran. So been a few hiccups along the way, but at the moment, not much we can do about it. I think we keep on putting out really good news flow and also good results as well. So we just got to keep on doing what we're doing and things will turn. A bit of a comparison again. TVN was that $600 million market cap. We're sitting at $30 million market cap. There's just a truckload of upside for us to get to close to where those guys are as well. And also noting that we've got two projects as well, the Rare Earth Project and also the Fluorspar Project. If we skip on to the next slide. So location, just a reminder for everyone, we are in Nevada with the Fluorspar, so we'll be talking about Fluorspar today and not the Rare Earth Project. We've got some good stuff coming out on the Rare Earth Project over the next month or two that we'll look to do a separate update on that and combine all that into a separate presentation as well. Some good location though for Fluorspar, obviously being in the US, close to Las Vegas, close to the Hawthorne military base, and we continue to have some really good discussions over there with some of the various people. If we move on to the next slide, why Quinn is special. So we just put some highlights in here. We've gone from what was the original deal, which was 40 odd claims based around Mammoth and Horseshoe. We've since expanded that area to 226 mining claims. So I've now really got a district scale opportunity there. We're looking to try and get multiple projects up and running in one area and then have a centralized mill facility and then hub and spoke. And sort of noting, you can see on the bottom right hand corner, there's a scale there, 5 kilometers. So all of these projects are all within a certain area. So we can probably base a project close to that Horseshoe and Mammoth project areas and then continue to bring in a lot more projects. We are also looking outside this area as well, and we continue to look at lots of other projects within Fluorspar as well. If anything is of interest, we'll obviously look to pick it up, but our current focus is sitting around Quinn and the Fluorspar. So there's over 20 odd Fluorspar occurrences. Darren will walk you through the epithermal system that we've got there. The grades are just super, and along with the thicknesses and close to surface. Within the Horseshoe to Mammoth area, there's an 8 kilometre fertile mineralised corridor just in that area there that we'll really delve into today. but there's obviously lots of areas outside of that as well. We've got the high priority drill targets that we've now been working on. Darren's been out on site multiple times this year. That's now fed into all our permitting program. All the permits are looking to be submitted in August to get that maiden drilling program on board. And I'll touch on some of the permitting program towards the end of the presentation as well. We are also looking at an early Met Spa project in terms of can we get that started at Horseshoe. The grades are great. They're almost direct shipping ore, or they are direct shipping ore. So that looks good. And hey, we've got some good gold upside there. So things are even better than we thought. On the next slide, we've got a bit of comparison here. So we decided to throw this in, so a bit of context so Darren can then talk to the various projects and prospects and deposits we've got. So this is a bit of Project Blue data, USGS data, and also some of the company research we've been doing. So the USGS did a similar type thing back in 2017, and they put in virtually the whole global producers of fluorspar around the world. So this is a subset of the detail, but effectively what it's showing you there is the bulk of the projects in the world are sitting in between 2 to 40 million tonnes in size and between 20% and 50% head grades. You see a few outliers to the left in terms of really small projects in some of the smaller regions in Asia. One really large tonnage but low grade area as well. And then a bit of an outstanding one, which is the green dot at the top there, which is Mexico. So that's sort of an interesting little aside there for you. But you can see where we're heading on this graph here is Quinn sitting in that between 30 and 70% grades is what we're seeing. The tonnages are yet to be done. There is a historic resource out there, but we do start getting into that highlighted zone quite easily. So the more and more we move to the right of that zone and hopefully a little bit up, the more and more this project will be successful. But as you see, down below 20%, there's just virtually no projects there and also tonnage-wise as well. So all I'll do now is I'll throw over to Darren. Darren can jump into geology in Nevada and the two projects.
Yeah, so we thought it was important to bring the market and our investors along on the knowledge of geology in Nevada and why it's so important, particularly with the announcement we did this week relating to the gold, because we don't want people to be confused and we don't get really diverted onto gold on in this. But Nevada is a gold state, and it produces, over the last 10 years on average between 3.5 and 5 million ounces of gold per annum. That's about half that of Western Australia, but it's only about 11% of the overall size of Western Australia. So it's extremely strong gold producing states. The Carlin Trend and the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend are the big systems, but also worthwhile noting Round Mountain at greater than 15 million ounces, probably more like 20 million ounces of gold, run by Kinross and the BT District, but North Bullfrog and Merlin discoveries by Anglo Gold Ashanti, greater than 14 to 15 million ounces. This image down here in the bottom left is sort of a Google Earth type view with the gold deposits put on there for Nevada, slightly oblique. But what you can see is in these darker bands through here, that's the ranges, and in between that are the basins. So in a big tertiary rift basin that is pulled apart and dropped down these valleys, and as a result, a whole lot of volcanism and intrusive activity occurred in here around about 40 to 20 million years ago. And it's that intrusive activity that has introduced the epithermal systems, the fluorspar, and also gold. And a Carlin style system is basically an epithermal system with a special kind of stratigraphic host rock on it in very simple terms. But the world's largest gold companies are operating in this district. Barrick, Newmont, Goldcorp, Kinross, Anglo Gold Ashanti all have mines in this district. Yeah. So in terms of Quinn's, this is some satellite work that we announced earlier on in the year in March when we were first getting involved with the project, where we essentially mapped out the alteration halo through the system. So about 8 kilometers from south of the Dress Circle to Mammoth, we've got this considerable alteration. The different colors on here relate to different kinds of alteration, green being strongly phyllic alteration, and red being more silicified alteration. Our lithocap we're going to talk a little bit about today is sitting up on here, and Horseshoe, where as Brett noted, is one of our early development projects. How does fluorspar form? Well, you need to have fluorine in an intrusion, so a hot magma chamber, in this case about 40 million years ago. A hot magma chamber brings acidic fluorine-bearing fluids into the system. They then move up through the sedimentary sequence and start to cool, but because they're acidic, in our case, they're eating away at the limestone. Now, there's many historic narrow vein deposits in the volcanics all across Nevada, but if you're in the limestone, you get these bulk tonnage systems, you get bigger widths and things that lend themselves to modern mining, right? So greater tons and excellent grades, of course, as well. So we're largely looking at the fluorspar replacement type systems in the beds, either with the breccia pipe or with veins. But the fluorine comes in, it reacts with the calcium carbonate in the limestone, and it drops out CaF2. That's fluorite or fluorspar. Fluorite, fluorspar are both interchangeable. So we're forming the upper part of a system. And then at the top, what would have formed, 40 to 30 million years ago, is a silica lithocap. We have one of those exposed. And if anyone's ever traveled to New Zealand or to any hot springs areas around the world, you'll see these silica terraces with all the steam and everything coming out of them. That's what the lithocap is. It's generally devoid of mineralization, but mineralization pools beneath it on that. So a little while ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we announced the results of our soil sampling for fluorine and fluorine pathfinders through our area, and we have this is ridge and spur soil sampling, and we're seeing, particularly in the high alteration zones, we're seeing strong fluorine and fluorine pathfinders in there. The limestones and dolomites are very porous and reactive to mineralization, and we now have 3 drill to resource ready targets: Horseshoe, Mammoth, and Big Jim, with the scale sort of demonstrated from our field type mapping. If you look at a cross section of just the Horseshoe through the Big Jim area, it looks like this. And I've got a more zoomed out version of this when we start talking about the gold in a little bit. But basically, we have the older pogonite limestones over thrust on top of the Simonson dolomite. And this sawmill thrust fault through here, which is marked by a jasperoidal layer, so a highly silicified layer, is really key. At Big Jim, we see the mineralization pooling beneath this thrust fault. So that's acting like an aquitard. An aquitard is basically a layer when the fluids rise, they can't get through it. And everything starts to happen along the length of that structure through there. They have got through it here at Horseshoe. And at Horseshoe, we have a excellent replacement zone beneath a silica cap, but there is a feeder structure in there, and we think it's around about 200 meters or less down to where the sawmill thrust is beneath that. So all of this becomes target area. So we've got our near surface things ready for drill out. Big Jim through here. We've got the lithocap to drill from the nice flat area from the top to drill Big Jim extensions, pick up rocket on the way down. North Horseshoe here, North Horseshoe Canyon, where a spectacular high fluorine in soil numbers, up to 6% fluorine in soils, which is a really remarkable number. I mean, almost compared to, say, Tavan, almost all grade, really, but in soil results. So it shows that there's definitely something hiding through there. So that's our best geological interpretation through that area. And we kind of know, and maybe when we get to the show and tell, remind me, Lucas and Brett, that I've got a rock here that I'll maybe quickly talk about how it shows multiple phases of mineralization in there. So the Horseshoe to Big Jim corridor, with the alteration mapping on the soils on there, we've seen intense epithermal alteration, pyrophyllite, allanite, dickite, phyllic alteration. If you're an explorer in epithermal systems, these terms are very familiar to you, and they're the kind of things you want to look out for to drill beneath in order to get the mineralized zones. The lithocap, being this sort of pink area here, 70,000 square meters, indicates a large silica terrace. The jasperoid replacement, which is marking the sawmill thrust fault through here, is the most intense alteration of all through there. And then through the stratigraphic controls, we can essentially potentially link all of these deposits together over, a 1.5 kilometer long corridor through there. So zooming into Horseshoe on that, we've now completed channel sampling on the safe parts of the old open pit that we can do. It is showing generally 65 to 70% plus grades, up to 85% grades in individual samples. Everything is looking like it's mineralized. It's a zone that's sort of 40 to 60 meters across in this direction, and then exposed, and then it plunges shallowly uphill underneath the silicified cap. So there's some of our channel sampling across the front of the pit through there. That's actually on this end face wall this particular photograph is taken from, and it continues all the way down through that eastern side. There's a few little rafts of limestone in there that are just caught up in this big replacement zone, but they'll be sorted out when we get to the mining phase. We saw some historic drilling. These are the only drill holes on the project that have been reliably located to date. These were drilled by Union Carbide, incidentally drilled before the open pit was in place. It was drilled from the access track, but it's essentially below the top of the ore deposit. So this is a southeast-northwest cross section, and they intersected, between 25 or between sort of 5 and 25-meter thicknesses of mineralization, and then the ore body sits also above that behind it. So I don't know if you can see my cursor, but up behind there. So we know we've got very strong mineralization. There's a number of sections of the old drill core from the 50s, which we don't have, of course. That drill core's gone missing. That ended in these breccias, and they weren't assayed for. So we don't really know what they're going to run, but reported fluorspar in breccia at depth. So they only sampled the massive and semi-massive fluorspar zones through there. So we're hoping, of course, when we get on here and drill, we start drilling 20, 30 meter true width type intersections on this body over quite a wide zone and push them on into the basal zone. We see this kind of breccia zone also at Big Jim.
So, Darren, just a quick one. Breccia zone for the uninitiated is effectively a mixture of fluorine and lumps of limestone in there. That obviously didn't go to a full fluorspar, 100% fluorspar.
Yeah. So that's exactly what we see here in this photograph. So excellent segue, Brett. So this is Big Jim. We have a massive fluorspar body here. Historic numbers around 98% plus fluorspar. So all of that is fluorspar. And then the bottom part of the sequence here, it's a little hard to see on here. It's a bit misleading, that photograph, but this thing dips shallowly into the hill, and here's some old tunnels that have gone into it. And then at the bottom is this breccia where we're getting pieces of the surrounding country rock surrounded by fluorspar within that. So ultra high grade to something that's maybe running sort of 50, 60% beneath that. Fluorspar, but easily sorted out in there. And bear in mind, 50 to 60% on Brett's graph he showed earlier is very high grade to begin with, right? So, yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we might be mining in Mexico or whatever, but we also have this beautiful high cap zone there at Big Jim. These workings were from the 1940s. Still in pretty good condition, really, but we've mapped it out over 220 meters of strike length using some old plans and followed out the jasperoid zone on the hanging wall through here. So this is zoomed in on there. And so our target is basically exposed here. We'd aim to drill through and prove up this zone, heading beneath this jasperoidal silicified zone that's marked by the sawmill thrust on that. So that's it in plan view. That's it in cross section. The Mammoth fluorspar deposit is about 9,000 square meters of mapped high-grade fluorspar. We've got up to 80% individual rocks. This is a little bit lower grade than Horseshoe and Big Jim. It's looking like being around 30 to 40% grades at Mammoth, but it's quite a large zone. It's 50 to 60 meter true width zone. Extends north-south for several hundred meters. It's a steeply dipping breccia pipe. There is an old adit off to the south that's kind of projected onto this section through here, and that's in the footwall zone, and that's 17.76. So again, we can look at bulking out these lower grade zones in with the high grade zones, and we don't see the eastern margin exposed because it's under talus slope. So we need to obviously come through here and drill to try and pinpoint that eastern margin. But this is not a 1 to 2 foot wide zone like a lot of the historic mines. This is a substantial system. The northern part across the Sawmill Creek through here is this exposure here, which was in here. We've got all this fluorspar sitting at the bottom of the hill with unmineralized limestone cover, and it's plunging into the hill. So we'd look to get above that and drill into that zone there to continue that further north as well. Now, you'll see us probably not talking a lot about gold going forward, but we just had to put something out in the market because we were getting numbers. And me being an old gold geologist, I'm quite excited about it. But fluorspar is an indicator of a highly evolved acidic magmatic rock. And other significant fluorite indicators in Nevada are associated with major epithermal gold deposits. So the BT district was an old mine called Daisy that was a fluorspar mine before there was historic gold mines in the area. Same thing with Round Mountain. So fluorspar not every gold occurrence in gold mine in Nevada is associated with fluorspar, but the really, really good ones are, right? So that's a really important note. Schematically, what you get is an alkaline intrusion, like a magma chamber coming in. Alkaline being it's not alkaline in the sense of the acid. It's another term we use for things that are generally low in quartz. You'll get gold zones forming beneath, and then you get the fluorite zones forming above that directly beneath the silica sinter cap. These things are all kind of mixed around a bit, and this is very stylized and textbook kind of thing, but they are forming in the same system, but they're not necessarily commingled. So when we've released assay results on deleterious potential elements in a fluorite, we have none. We have no arsenic, no antimony, no silver, um, cadmium or any of these other things you get in epithermal systems. So our fluoride product will be nice and clean, but very close to it, we're going to have some gold. So it's a classic low sulfidation epithermal setting, and this is now the gold in soils on there. So we see the dress circle with strong gold in soils. We see North Horseshoe and North Horseshoe Canyon, and also Mammoth with strong golds in gold. The footwall at Mammoth, we have up to 6.3 grams in new rock chip samples there. And these are rock chips that were collected whilst looking for fluorite. We just happen to assay them for gold as well. Every geologist in the world wants to discover a kaolin system. They are the simplest, the greatest gold-only deposits in the world. They are typically 20 to 60 million ounces each, and the whole districts would be hundreds of millions of ounces. What is really important in a kaolin type system, named for the kaolin trend in Nevada, but they have them elsewhere in the world. What is important is the stratigraphy and the aquitans, right? So when you look at a stratigraphic column from the kaolin trend, you're seeing all the same formations that we're seeing in the Quinn Range. It just hasn't been explored for. There's a very important thrust fault on the kaolin trend in the Battle Mountain Eureka trend called the Roberts Mountain Thrust. Look it up in AI or Google. It'll tell you all about it. That is older than the mineralization, so it's not a controlling structure, but it acts as an aquitar because it's tied, it's keyed up with a whole lot of jasperoids in there. We have exactly the same relationship with the Sawmill Thrust. And where we're getting our gold is very similar locations to that. So a Nevada geologist said you won't get epithermal gold with that and a kaolin system in the same thing. Well, that's because they're not looking in the same place. Whereas here, we're a crossover between the epithermal Walker Lane trend and the kaolin trend, Battle Mountain Eureka trends to the north. So both those systems formed at the same time. So why you can't have both styles in one isn't known. But people use a sort of a hydrocarbon type technique called source pathway focus trap. The source is the tertiary magmatism, also doing our fluorspar. The pathway is the stratigraphic, the carbonate units that offer lots of permeability, lots of fluid flow going through them. The focus beneath the thrust faults and the jasperoids, and the trap being the carbonaceous shale units, the dirty limestones, they call them. So these things have got a bit of carbonaceous material like carbon, like sort of wood kind of things. It's not coal seams, but they're a little bit richer in total organic carbon, and they trap the gold and bring it out of the solution. So if you looked at a cross section, a regional cross section across the kaolin trend, you'd see something very similar to this, but this is across our area. So we have the Pogonit limestones overthrust the Sevi and Simonson dolomites. So that's all along the Sawmill thrust. Deeper down, we've got something called the Rimrock thrust. We have in the jasperoids, we have the big gym occurrence of fluorspar, but above that, we have these jasperoid bodies. So that's the kaolin target, the stratigraphic target, essentially running through that. We've also high gold in soil anomalies within the North Horseshoe Canyon, sitting, they'd be coming off the same set of structures as the fluorspar, but they'd be separated on it. We've got a high gold on the footwall of Mammoth. We'll look at in more detail. And then we've got the source intrusions off to the south, particularly beneath Dresser. where it's not mapped as intrusion in the area, but there is very high soils above that. So on our central corridor, using a statistical analysis to look for pathfinders all the way from Horseshoe through to Big Jim, has got potential, but we've seen very high numbers in the North Horseshoe Canyon and down from the Big Jim deposit. And then the lithocap being the top of those hot springs. Again, when we drill from the lithocap to target Big Jim at depth, we will be drilling through the gold target zones in there, in the footwall. So we're getting two for the price of one. We don't need to spend extra money looking for gold. We can essentially drill in the same kind of system. This is what that looks like in terms of a photograph looking up the North Horseshoe Canyon. So we've got the lithocap up on the hill. We've got the thrust fault. It's shallow angle, so it comes up around on the contours here. We've got gold and we've got fluorspar on this side of the canyon. We've got gold on that side of the canyon, and then Big Jim is located beneath this thrust around the corner, the other side of this hill through here, with reports of historic golden creeks coming out from this North Horseshoe Canyon. It's not the Grand Canyon; it's only small. We can get to it quite easily. I've been up in there several times now. And then at Mammoth, which is further off to the northeast, this is where we've got excellent rock chips on the footwall, clustering on the footwall up to 6.3 grams gold. So this is the main fluorspar body here, if you can see my cursor moving. But then to the west of that, we're getting strong gold in there. And then further up the hill beneath the Eureka quartzite aquitard, we're getting a lift in gold source there as well. And then Dress Circle off to the south. We call it Dress Circle. There's an old skarn gold, silver working here called Dresser, but we have these things that are circular type structures, so we call it Dress Circle. We're up to 77 ppb gold. That's a very high number for soils, a very high number, but it's coming with the arsenic, the mercury, the silver, the classic epithermal round mountain or BT style association through there, and it's a big altered zone. So that's a 3D view of the hill, and these are these circular collapsed structures around it. So the epithermal strategy: define the fluorspar resource, advance the metallurgy, evaluate early vet spar production, and move rapidly from exploration to development phase. And I'll hand it back over to Brett.
If we go to the next slide, I suppose the key focus here is, as Darren said before we go off onto this slide, the gold, we're actually going to drill through those gold zones to get to the fluorspar zone. So we're not diverting our attention away to focus on gold or anything else like that. It's just been a really good upside for us. We're going to drill those holes anyway. If we see gold in them, hey, we've got a big upside there. And as Darren's saying, it could be sizable. So that's probably just a key point to note to everyone. And all those stratigraphic boundaries have obviously been formed over millions of years, pushed around and pushed up. So those cross sections that Darren's done are really informative. Take your time to have a look at them. There's when you start looking at how it's eroded out and what it's actually showing through those cross sections that have been laid down over millions of years, it really does start making good sense. Going back to fluorspar, we're still looking at acid spar and met spar. As we sort of mentioned, there's historic reports out there that we've looked at. The metallurgical test work program's well underway at the moment. We've got head grades that have just come in recently on all those. We've tried to do hanging wall, main zone, and footwall zones so that we can understand where the fluorspar is. Can we separate waste from fluorspar and all those type of things as well? So those results come in. They've again confirmed the grades. We're still looking at the detail as we speak, waiting on some size by assay analysis, and then it's going into the flotation. So that's all happening quite well. We've also been working with TOMRA on some initial samples for optical sorting. Those initial samples are still being finalised, but from what we've seen from initial discussions with them, we can see very easy separation between the waste and the fluorspar. When it gets a bit mixed, obviously you're not going to be able to separate it perfectly, so the mixed zones will have to go back into an acid spar plant. Key for us though, there's an early potential met spar project, given the grades that we're seeing, and if we can optical sort it, we can actually increase those grades even further. So we can get up and running, get cash flow happening, continue to then expand the back end. So again, a met spar project is a crush, a screen, and potentially an optical sort. So it's like a bit of a quarry. And think of it 1,000 tonnes a day or less. So it's a baby plant. It's all mobile equipment, very cheap to do. And then the back end plant would be the expansion with a grinding mill and a flotation circuit to get to your acid spar. So everything's doable, everything's on the run, everything's going in the right direction, which is great. We'll also look to do a bulk sample as well. Next steps, so lots of different next steps there. Pending assay results still coming out for some of the recent assays that Darren's been doing on some of the new claims that we've stepped out to and grabbed. There's ongoing sampling throughout the whole area as well. Geological modelling, we've now got all that historic data from Union Carbide. That's all being digitised in there, and this is forming some of the obviously the presentation that we've been doing here with Darren today. So that's been good to correlate some of the information that Darren's seen out there, but also the old timers saw as well. We've busily got more field programs in there. So, Darren, I think you've been to site at least 3 to 4 times now. So, and that's just this year alone. We've got another geologist. We've got multiple geologists on board, but another geological team's actually getting out there later this week. So we continue to do work out there. So the field programs continue. The drill targets are targeted now. Darren's got about 130 drill pads that he's designed with multiple holes going in from multiple directions on those drill pads. So that is now feeding into all the permitting activities. The permitting activities, as I mentioned, early next month, we're anticipating to be in a position to put those permits into US Forestry Services. That includes all the flora fauna surveys that we've done. They've also done some recent cultural surveys. So that's a mixture of both Indian culture or First Nations culture and also the first settler cultures as well. So we look at all those type of things. Met test work, as I mentioned, underway. We'll get some results out about that and the maiden drilling program itself. Timing on the drilling program. So when we submit, I'll give you a quick walkthrough on the timeframes that is generally employed by the US Forestry Services. We'll submit the permit applications along with all those reports on flora fauna. They've generally got 30 days to respond to what we've put in there, ask any more questions, which there's always going to be a question, and then we'll respond to those questions and we'll keep on going through the process. So do I have an answer of will we be drilling in the next month or two, or will it be later this year or early next year? No, it's the first time we've been through the process. The key for us, though, is our flora fauna surveys and cultural surveys across the whole claim area. So we don't need to go back and do that again. It's done. It's there for the next 10 years. So for each program that we want to expand on, we can use that data, put in a new permit. The key for us is we're targeting that horseshoe to Mammoth region as the starter, and then we'll look to step out based on success. Based on that drilling program, we'll obviously get a resource out there as the plan, given that there's a historic resource that people can go look up, and then into the development studies. And we're already doing various studies as we speak on met spar and acid spar sizing and also benchmarking against some of those existing projects in the world as well.
Thank you very much, Brett and Darren, for that presentation.
I'm going to show my rocks quickly, Lucas.
Yeah, get your rocks out.
Okay, this is a piece of fluorspar from Big Jim. It's very high grade. It's purple. It's we've previous assay results from this are 98, 99%. This is from Horseshoe, and this is a really, really interesting rock because what it has is it has bits of high grade purple fluorspar in it, and it's surrounded with a sea of fluorspar. So the white stuff in here is fine grade fluorspar. So the fluids that have made this rock have come from underneath, probably gone through the sawmill flush with a continuation of this. It's broken off the source, bits of this, transported it up into the limestones and deposited 2 phases of mineralization. The early phase from depth and then the second phase from up there. And that basically shows this is a very active system. So this is a kind of breccia as well, but it's a fluorspar breccia. It's 2 fluorspar breccia samples running 80%. Right. So yeah, that kind of thing is what us geologists really love to see because it shows a well-developed, long-lived kind of system. Funnily enough, actually, if you turn it around, the actual bits of the fluorspar on the end here are actually green as well. So there's potentially a third phase, purple, green, and the white fluorspar that's occurring on there. Yeah. Thanks, Lucas.
Very cool. We'll now move on to the Q&A section. We've received a number of questions, both from pre-registrations and live. So the first question, now that you're learning a bit more about the fluorspar history and mineralization potential at Quinn, how big do you think this opportunity could be?
Oh, it's a forward-looking statement, and Darren, I might throw to you, but obviously we can't say it's going to be small based on what we've
Yeah.
seen, but I think it's
The,
going to be sizable from what we've seen as well.
the ASX will be all over us. We are looking at a scale potential of multiple deposits that have width, have length, have depth, and have grade, which is really like we've probably reviewed 20 or 30 other fluorspar projects around North America, and we just keep on coming back and saying, my God, we actually have the best, right? The best that we've seen so far. There's a few other narrow vein ones around. Brett put up his graph and said, it looks like based on we're going to sit somewhere in and around that bubble in the graph potentially, but we can't say. We really can't say. But we certainly, everything that we see, every step looks like it's getting better and better. And that's what we're saying in the market, but we can't give any indication on what an exploration target or resource could look like. But we
It's
know what
probably
we're
fair to say,
targeting.
though, that our milestones that we put into the agreement when we bought the project was first milestone was 2 million at greater than 30%, and second milestone was 5 million at greater than 30% as well, and with the metallurgical recovery. So there's obviously some thought process that's gone into those targets and where we see economic projects and where we see maybe the project might be heading.
Very good. There is some questions on timeline for drilling and approvals, but I would suggest that you've already sort of addressed that towards the end of your presentation, Brett.
Yeah,
Um,
look, I think we've covered it. I think, look, there's a bit of an unknown. We've done everything right in terms of upfront, front end loading the work. We've just now got to go through the process. Interesting enough, and I will point this out, we had US Forestry Services out there with Darren probably a month and a half ago, Darren, I think it was. And we've walked them through the project. We've walked them through all the existing tracks. So for those of you that have seen one of the past presentations we've done, I might have brought up the Google Earth imagery. If you went out there and looked for that, you'll see existing tracks up to, say, Horseshoe Pit, up to the top of the litho cap, and accessing virtually all these deposits. So it's not a brownfield sites per se. There's already existing areas that we can access with a drill rig very, very quickly. All we got to do is tick through the boxes. A part of what we'll also look for as the permitting goes forward, once we've been able to submit all the permits, Fast 41, we'll be contacting those guys again. We've already had the chat with them. They said come back to us as soon as the permits are in, and then obviously we look to get Fast 41 status.
are you likely to continue to expand your footprint in Nevada?
I sort of did mention during the presentation that we've already expanded to where we are now with those 226 claims. We continue to look at areas outside of that. Most of the areas, as Darren mentioned, we've looked at sort of 20 different projects, not just in Nevada, but other places in North America. Generally, they're small, high-grade veins. They might get 1 million tons at max, but at good grades, they wouldn't justify a mill by themselves. So if you go to gold mining philosophy, say in Western Australia, you get a nice project up and running, and then you're bringing in all these satellite pits. So yes, there is the answer. We continue to look at things. Does it make sense? Does it stack up? Does it have the right grades, tonnages, right locations? All the normal due diligence things we'll continue to look at. If it stacks up, then we'll look to bring something else in. But to date, as Darren said, we just keep on coming back to Quinn as being the best thing we've seen.
Okay, good. Um, so speaking of production, you provided an existing producer chart on slide 6. Are you able to elaborate on the associated production rates for a typical fluorspar mine?
So yes, so generally a bit like what Tavan's done, they've gone and put a 150,000 ton per annum facility is what they're targeting. So when you do the benchmarking and you look at those various producers, they generally sit between sort of 75 to 100,000 tons of acid spar per annum, up to about 250,000 tons per annum. So bigger always has bigger financial metrics and everything else always looks better and more sexy. I suppose it just depends on the grade and tonnage. So, yes, they're the existing producers in the world. Makes sense. Mexico's a little bit bigger than that again. There have been some other larger producers around the world as well in China, but generally their grades are dropping off, is what's being seen around the world.
But with our deposits, Brett, that like even like 1,000 ton a day of throughput because our grades are so good, we're processing a lot less material than others will need to process in
Correct.
order
I
to
mean,
get the
key
product.
comparison, say if you were looking at Tavan, their resource grade's about 8%, and I think their uh, mining grade's about 10, 12%. So we're already sitting somewhere between 30 and 70%. So our tonnage throughputs, our waste, our energy requirements to grind and mill and all those things become a lot lower. So just some positives probably more on our side, and obviously grade always wins most of the time on most projects.
Another one on potential scale. On slide 11, you have a cross section for Fluorspar. Are you able to provide some guidance on the blue sky in terms of tonnage and grade for the near surface material, feeder pipes, and deeper sawmill thrust material?
Darren, are
That
you able to bring slide 11 up? We might just
Yes.
refer to that if we can.
are we talking only a few million tons or tens of millions of tons potentially?
Again, forward-looking statements, so we've got to be careful here because ASX will get on us. Um, we already know from the historic resources that were there, they were looking at the surface outcrops, generally around Horseshoe and Mammoth. So Mammoth's just off the scale on here. So if you think about the tonnages they were talking about, there's good tonnages obviously in that. The extensions to North Horseshoe and other areas. So you're looking at potentially millions to tens of millions of tons there. Speculative again, we need to hit the sawmill thrust. We see that big Jim is obviously coming out the side there of and showing the sawmill thrust and the stratigraphy through there. If that
Mm.
continues all the way back, then people can do the maths there. It can suddenly become quite large. But
Yeah,
also what you saw
I
on
have.
that slide 6, there's obviously limits on how big they can get as well.
Yeah, so we see the sawmill thrust exposed at Big Jim, and we see it exposed in the North Horseshoe Canyon, and they're both associated with high grade fluorspar. How reliable and how thick it is underneath, that will obviously take drill testing. But the two places that exposed are both mineralized. And yeah, I've turned my video off because there's a little bit of internet lag. But where we're seeing them exposed, it's great. We're seeing the feeder pipe in the old horseshoe pit that we're projecting that to continue down. So you start to add that together, and then it really does become one of the premier systems in the world. It's already a very, very good system, but if these things start to join together, it will be an existential threat to others. Forward-looking statement.
Okay, well qualified. Will initial drilling target both the gold zones along with the fluorspar?
Well, there you go. It's a
Well,
good slide to have up at the moment, Darren. So
yeah,
it doesn't show the gold on this one, but effectively, as Darren mentioned, the holes will actually go through the gold zones before they hit the fluorspar zones. Is probably the
yeah.
short
So
form.
Yeah, so in this zone in particular here, um, we were drilling from the lithocap and down the side of the hill, drilling through essentially that jasperoid we think is the main source of the gold through that area, and then into the fluorspar zone. So we're getting two for one. So we don't have to plan a special hole just for the drilling. And then at Mammoth, there's Mammoth, this one. So at Mammoth, we have gold here mainly associated with the footwall material. So as we're on this side here and we're drilling through the main Mammoth zone, drilling to the west, we'll be hitting the gold zone here on that footwall as well on that. So again, I don't think we're planning to actually drill gold specific holes. I don't think there's a geologist in the world that would be desperate to drill through this lithocap because it's so classic epithermal textbook thing to drill through that lithocap, and we probably will have some gold sitting at the base of this as well, and then push on. But we've got to drill through it anyway, is the thing. So
So key message is
yeah,
we're focused on fluorspar. Fluorspar is obviously what we're trying to get up and running as quickly as possible. There's probably some good upside in gold if we keep on hitting it.
yeah. We've sort of found it by accident, really. But we kind of knew it's likely to be there because it's such a big epithermal system. So we made sure we assayed for it, but we didn't go out there looking for it. It just started coming through on the assay results, which is fantastic.
Fortunate accident. Uh, maybe I don't know if you need to continue to share, but for this question, how quickly can you permit a met spa project? And could you then add on an acid spa module, or will modules be based on ongoing drilling success?
So Met Spa, so as I mentioned earlier, we've already done all the upfront flora fauna surveys, cultural heritage type surveys. So we'll be able to use those for the next 10 years. So that accelerates everything going forward. So we don't have to go back like you see in Western Australia or other places and you're doing drill lines and then you go back to another permit, get another drill line. So we've effectively almost done the environmental assessment, not to full detail, but largely up the front of what's there. So that enables permitting to really speed up on the second phase of the permits and mining permits. So how quickly can we permit it? Good question. It's effectively permitting a quarry to start with. We've asked the question and we've already instructed our guys at Westland to start considering permitting pathways for Metspa. I won't give you an answer today because I don't want to put a timeline on it, but we think it's relatively quick. From a acid spa point of view, I think the question was around can we add on a module on the back of it? So yes, generally you'd have a crushing and screening front end no matter what, and then the back end is effectively adding in a grinding mill post the stockpile. So you'd have a stockpile feeding a grinding mill, and then going into flotation circuits. So yes, it's an add-on. Acid spa, obviously with being a wet process and having some flotation reagents in there, generally benign. Generally flotation's done about pH of 9. We'll have to get a tails facility and a few other things permitted. So that will be a slightly longer process, hence why we want to get on with Met Spa to start with, get cash flow and then continue to fund Acid Spa ongoing. And I think the other question was around modules. So again, depending on how, so I suppose the question, let's step back a bit. Do we want to be out there for the next 3 years drilling out a 20, 40, 50 million ton resource at 30% grade? That'd be fantastic. The market would love it, but it doesn't give you any cash flow. So can we get a 5 to 10 million ton resource up there as quickly as we can and then get on with the project and then continue expanding? That would probably be my position. So that would logically lead to having a module of acid spa project and being able to put in a second train next door to it would be my response to it. Again, forward-looking statements, timeframes, and all the wonderful things that go with that. But yes to all those things.
In relation to the engagement with Julie Bishop Partners, has there sort of been any discussions at government or regulatory level with US government in relation to funding and offtake agreements or the like?
So Fast 41, we've already sort of told people that we've already had meetings with Fast 41, which is good. We'll have follow-up meetings with them most likely next month with that. We've also been engaging with, and I've just got to be careful again of what we say and what we don't say, but the short story is yes, we are looking at talking to all the normal people that you'd be expecting from a government point of view and positioning ourselves to be able to talk to Department of War or Defence, whichever way you call it nowadays, Department of Energy, Exim Bank. You'll also be talking to Export Credit Australia. So some of those discussions have already been had. We've also started getting registrations going through the system so that we're in all the government systems as well. So when we do have a resource out there and we're able to say, hey, this is what we want, we can go with an ask to the government and also offtake as well. And then that will lead into assisting us with banks. So Julie's out there. Julie's doing her job well. I did actually have a meeting earlier today with Julie and a couple of US guys looking about how they can help us going forward as well. Ex-ambassadors, ex-people that know how the US works effectively and how to assist us to get through the systems.
President Trump recently stated as well, Brett, that the military's critical mineral sourcing needs to come from within the continental boundaries of America.
Correct.
So to not be reliable on critical minerals that are needed in the military from elsewhere. We are the closest fluorspar project, certainly of any scale, and the most advanced, closest to the Project Vault storage facility at Hawthorne, the military base there. So all those things, the global geopolitics and the uncertainty that we have currently in global peace, including and especially the Middle East, is shitty for markets, but good for people that are operating in the US. and we've been welcomed with open arms by the US forestry. They don't see us as foreigners coming in and taking their minerals. They see us as part of that. The federal agency sees as part of their future and bringing Australian expertise into that American environment for developing these. America have had loads of fluorspar deposits for years and years and years, but they haven't done anything with them. And it's taken an Australian company to come in there and say, "Hey, do you guys know what you're sitting on?" And that's just fantastic for us, I think.
I'd probably also just point out Aries as well. So Aries is that 20 to 50,000 ton project in Utah that they might be starting in the next 3 to 6 months, by the sounds of things, everything being built. So they had that Department of Defense offtake agreement, which is if you can produce acid spar effectively, we'll buy it off you at $600 plus US a ton for whatever they can produce. So no doubt, if you were sitting in my position, well, I'd be going and asking for the same deal as those guys. If we can produce it, we can sell it to you guys. We can also sell it to DuPont and Honeywell and a number of other parties. And if you look at Taiwan as well, why can't you export it to Japan? Japan's a like-minded country, and they need it for steel mills and they need it for chips and all those other things as well. So, look, there's plenty of really good funding opportunities there. There's plenty of good offtake opportunities. I've had people reach out from Europe, of all places, to be taking an offtake as well. So we're getting lots of inbound interest. The US guys are interested. We've just got to obviously go through the steps, and we'll announce it as things come up to the market.
Yeah, we've only had the project for a few months, but we've made such incredible progress, Brett. I think
Correct.
in the short time that we've had it, we understand the geology, we understand the market, we understand who our customers are going to be, and we understand how to get to the point that we can get it out of the ground. That's really positive.
Yep. And a good clean product as well. So that product looks really clean. Just a mental note that if you do get a really clean product, then you can actually sell it to a higher spec hydrofluoric acid plant. And I know there's one that's been looked to be put into Japan, and I won't mention who, but if that new hydrofluoric acid plant needs a supply, then we might be on that radar list. And if the quality and the low impurity, so Mexico sees really high arsenic levels and a few other impurities. So they generally take a discount to their price. They can't sell necessary to all hydrofluoric acid plants, and those hydrofluoric acid plants need impurity removal, especially around arsenic. We're just not seeing arsenic or any of those other major impurities. So it just says that we might be able to sell it for a little bit higher price and get it into these premium end users.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. If you do have further questions, feel free to email us at info@corporatestorytime.com. Guys, have you got any final comments you'd like to share to wind up?
No, look, thanks for everyone for joining. As I mentioned, this is a little bit of a geek out session if we can, so letting Darren just really explain the geology well. We'll keep it simple on certain other ones. The rocks look good, as he says, but thanks for listening. Get on there and buy some shares. We should be much higher than that. As I say, TVN at 600 million market cap versus us at 30 million market cap. We've both got multiple projects. There's a gap there. Just needs people to keep on pushing it, and away we go.
What an excellent message to finish on. So that concludes today's webinar. A recording will be available shortly and shared through OD6 Resources and Corporate Storytime social media channels. On behalf of OD6 Metals Limited and Corporate Storytime, thank you, Brett and Darren, for joining us, and for all of the audience for joining along as well. We look forward to welcoming you at our next investor briefing. Enjoy the rest of your day.